Hello, everybody. Welcome back here tonight. Got a good show, really good show, actually. Amazing presentation for you tonight. We got I got a couple more minutes work here, so we're going to play a song from James Lucid's site on YouTube. He just actually posted recently, in the last 16 hours, I think it was, Atoms for Kickback. I gotta love that. I'll see you in a couple minutes.
Vegetation stripped, terrain displaced, access cleared at its pace. COP30 locked for global view, required forests to be removed, land prepped without return, built for optics, not for Earth. Atoms for climate, an IEEA phrase, presented sharp, disguised as fun. Uranium pitched as net relief, no discussion, just display. Contract shift day after day, presence pitched as public care, aligned in funds they won't declare. Atoms for kickbacks, selling nuclear as clean. No one argues the fraud and the waste. Atoms for kickbacks, cloaked as global reform. Sites arranged, simulations left unchanged. Nothing shifts from scripted range, all conclusions preordained. A nuclear build, the only way for a climate crisis now. IEE is selling nuclear with no regret. Atoms for kickbacks, posed as planetary cure. IEE promoting escalation for sure. Atoms for kickbacks, where the answer is decay. The cover remains as the contracts replay. Enjoy the summit where forest was clear. Climate caviar served with nuclear appeal. Atoms for kickbacks. Atoms for kickbacks. Atoms for kickbacks. Atoms for kickbacks.
That was awesome. I love it. That's my first time saying it. Unbelievable, eh? And just go back there for 1 second. Because the best way to listen to those music, James's music, is to go to his site to listen to it. Just hang on here. I shouldn't restart it because that if I don't play the whole thing, that goes against them. So that wasn't even in 1080. So if you want to really get the visuals, you need to go back and watch it on. And if you put the word climate change anywhere in your description, the trolls of our planet, UN, are going to put naughty words underneath it. I always try to avoid putting it under my video. James is so close now. No, he's past 400. He's past 450 videos now. My goodness. Should nuclear power be banned worldwide to preserve and restore Earth's ability to produce and sustain life? Some people might not appreciate the significance of that poll, and you could be forgiven. Just a little quick word of last night's video. So 10 hours after that video, I had no views, 89 views, and I had no thumbs up, only 20 thumbs up. 20 thumbs up, and so it's so hard to work all this equipment myself sometimes. So tonight I got 21 hours, 116 views. 116 views, 117 views at 22 hours. And there it is. I still only got 20 likes. So I never got a single like all day on a show I've been doing for over a decade, 5 days a week. Really. And that was an amazing video last night. I know I'm not some rock star like Grossi and the rest of them. But I'm a good person. I'm only trying to do the right thing. I've been doing this 24 years. I used to be a commercial diver, so I know a few things about the ocean. With almost 14,000 hours on the ocean floor, I know probably a bit more than most people. I ran some of the biggest fleets on the planet on top of that. That's the only way to keep the job, so to speak, guarantee I can go to work every day. Whatever, there's nothing I can do about the censorship. All I can do is come out and try to be a good person. And that is an easy job. Atoms for climate, atoms for kickback. James's song. That is wicked. That's pretty sneaky, man. I gotta like that. So, two of these buildings don't look like a normal reactor. Do you know which two it is? There was 8 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings. Does that matter anymore? Does the truth even matter anymore? That's Stumpy. Well, that's Stumpy, actually, reactor 4, and that's Medusa / Stumpy. So the emissions from that covered our planet in just 20 days. Neptunium-239 dispersion decays to plutonium after 2.5 days. Every 2.5 days, 50% will decay to plutonium-239. This is a model the model you're looking at is not based on the releases from these two buildings, for instance. Both of these, allegedly nothing got out. Less than a gram got out of reactor 2, apparently. So after 25 days, this plume is plutonium-239. This is unbelievable plumes, by the way. Reactor 4 to your left. Look, when you look at the sides of it, to your left there, this was supposed to be a 190-foot, 19-story, 65-meter building. You can see why they censor me. The fuel pools, which is around 8 reactor cores, because there's around 5.5, 5 3/4 reactor cores are stored at the top of the buildings each decade. And the buildings were a little over 30 years old at that time. And so let's say safely there was 8 reactor cores. There was probably double that there, but let's say 8. Let's be lowball it. These were pure uranium, pure plutonium. Chernobyl, for example, was a graphite reactor. It was a new reactor. It was a small reactor. It didn't have decades or a reactor fuel pool at all, let alone decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings. Hence the plume. The plume, officially, this never happened. Ask anybody in the United Nations, they'll tell you that didn't happen. But that happened. So then why should you trust United Nations if they're going to not acknowledge that happened? Why would you want to trust them for it? That's the point. And they orchestrated the cover-up through one of their subsidies, the degenerate International Atomic Energy Agency. They can censor me all they want, but they can't change the fact that I'm honest and that I care, that I actually care, that I don't play games. I got no time for games at all. At Adams for kickback, I still can't get over that. It's hilarious. And so if they're not going to put those 2 buildings, inventories that were lost, which is 18 reactor cores, and that's not in these models, so imagine how bad the plume actually was, still is. I mean, you lost everything. That was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor, so that counts as a little extra. Atoms for kickback. And so there's other examples. I just showed you plutonium. This was the xenon-133 plume, which looks like that right there. One of the original studies was 450,000 atoms per. So like a Becquerel is a pulse of energy from an atom. So you need a physical atom, anthropogenic man-made atom, to produce the Becquerel. So when the 450,000 times, so when you talk about a Becquerel per square meter, that's the proper way to define it because it's fallout. So you wouldn't measure this in millisieverts or microsieverts. You wouldn't measure it in Becquerels because they're physical atoms, and that's what radioactive fallout is, physical atoms. I mean, when you look at, wasn't a nuclear scientist, there wasn't a single person at the International Atomic Energy Agency, UNSCLEAR, ERPA, the IPRC, any of the UN little muppets, that didn't look at that and realize the fuel pools were gone and the reactor core was gone for sure. Not maybe or not some of it, but it was ejected right out of the buildings. Because the reactor core and the fuel pools were at the very top of these 19-story, 65-meter, 190-foot buildings. 20 million particles. So for every iodine-131, there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129, which is another Canadian study actually showed up. The 132 and 133 are 9 times more effective than the 131. These were particles, so they were probably splitting atoms. This was because the inventories were lost at such a temperature and in such a fashion that everything was consumed, was atomized in aerosol, ionized and radiated. So you're talking about fuel particles. Fuel particulates will split atoms wherever they land, and they landed all over your planet. The iodine-129 gathers up not just in your thyroid gland, but in your heart and everywhere else. Now, it doesn't emit energy very far. It does do it almost at the speed of light, so it doesn't need to go far. It just needs to be the speed of light to destroy chromosomes and DNA and cells and molecules and everything else. And your body tries to repair that every second because it has to, and then it attacks the source every second. And you're talking about per liter. These are enormous numbers. So it's kind of important. You have plutonium at an enormous amount covering the planet. Xenon-133 which will decay into another deadly isotope. It's very dangerous. And of course, the 133, the 130, I think that's the 133, you would expect similar or more of 135, which decays to cesium, 137. So, like, how much money does it cost? I wanted to get a pavilion at United Nations, but they wanted $500,000 just so you can rent a place there for, 10 days? It's meant to keep people like me and you out. They have representatives from YouTube there, by the way. So their job is, I guess, going to be to censor anybody like me or you. It's trying to have a real conversation, which is the United Nations' mortal enemy. Atoms for kickbacks. That's so funny, man. Okay, so high concentrations of plutonium americium. It was very, very, very high concentrations of cesium-137. This is the French government. Sorry, this model here. Think of a snowstorm. It starts in Japan, like this one here, is radiation fallout. Let me do that again. So think of it as, instead of radioactive fallout as a snowstorm. It starts in Japan, and by the time you get up to day 10, this is what it looks like. By the time it gets to day 15, this is what it looks like. By the time it gets to day 20, the whole planet, day 20 right there, of radioactive fallout at 1 million to 10 million atoms. Pretending this didn't happen is not a solution, United Nations, who's actually not a regulatory agency, as I'll show you that in a minute. So you have plutonium and neptunium that's two isotopes. You have xenon-133 is 3 isotopes. You have iodine-131 is 4. 132, 133 would be at 10 and 30 ratio respectively. 6 isotopes. Iodine-129 is 7 isotopes. Xenon-133, you can't have that without the 135, that's 8 isotopes. Americium is 9 isotopes that is quantified. And cesium-137, certainly can't have that without 134, so that's 11 isotopes. The data will be withheld. Did you give them the authority, the monetary, the equipment, the education to look for radiation so they wouldn't tell you? So that they would weaponize it against you? Is that why you got a government, that particular system of a government? When they finally, after decades and decades and decades of just doing nothing, just sitting there waiting for radioactive fallout, when it finally happens, they hide it on you? You got to rethink. There should be 1 million people showing up there. So United Nations is not a regulatory agency, right? Anna Clark, talking about the International Atomic Energy Agency, recycling, they spent $48 billion picking up 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout, and they don't want to store it because it looks bad for the International Atomic Energy Agency. But almost every story about the International Atomic Energy Agency, with any kind of controversy, you'll see a disclaimer. The International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulator. It doesn't have any authority whatsoever. It's not a regulator. It's not an arbiter. So it's not in a position to judge or approve anything, let alone water, soil, or anything else. It's not a regulator. Japan gets United Nations approval for water release. How can they get approval for water release when they're not a regulator? And who gave them the authority to poison the entire ecosystem with radioactive emissions from a nuclear meltdown? I certainly didn't, and I know you didn't. Adding that Japan would have the final say on the releases. Again, you see that disclaimer, right? But they make the assertion, the watchdog gave the approval. Of course, it never stopped releasing. It never stopped releasing. The reactors actually melted down. I just showed you 11 different isotopes quantified in catastrophic amounts just on their own is is a catastrophic event for a country or a planet. I just showed you 11. Does that make me the bad guy? Apparently so. Japan gets United Nations nuclear watchdog approval for water release. But how can you do that when they're not a regulatory agency? And this is that story where Japan will have the final say because they're not a regulatory agency. And when they gave a stamp of approval, this fraud, whatever the hell this is supposed to mean, right, you make the decisions for everybody else on the planet. Do you really think that the rest of the planet would accept that if there was a referendum worldwide? They would want you executed, sir, if that's what you really are. International Atomic Energy, and look at the face on Grossi, for goodness sakes. International Atomic Energy Agency assures safety of water release from the Fukushima disaster site. How are you going to assure the safety of releases 13 years later when the reactors lost all their inventories right away? How does that actually work, I wonder? What kind of voodoo science is that, the International Atomic Energy Agency? Scam science. Grossi emphasized in the report that his document is neither a recommendation nor an endorsement. Well, that's not what the headline says. That's not what the media sold us, is it? They assure us the safety of the water that has been hemorrhaging out with no way to contain it, covering the entire planet, and the radioactive fallout on top of that. But they assure us nothing got out. They're down right now at Conference of Parties 30, making other assertions that are simply the same level of lies. It's the same lie as this. What they're telling you down there is not true. And a lot of people are compartmentalized. And they get hypnotized by the $5,000 super certificate and wearing dirty underwear. So it's neither a recommendation nor an endorsement of the water release, and the Japanese government has the final say. So therefore, how can you assure the safety when it's already released on day 5? It was all gone anyway. It's pretty sneaky, right? Pretty deceptive, dishonest, deceitful. The City of Youth promotes young leadership in the climate fight. Climate fight? Really? We give them $1.3 billion, you're going to fix? Any idea how big this planet is? You got any idea how ludicrous it suggests anybody's going to fix it? Certainly not a military-industrial complex like United Nations, which is 195 militaries. Don't forget what they've done to North Korea. This could have been brainwashed by media from every direction for the last 70 years. Don't mean the United Nations had the moral high ground. A country already occupied for 50 years and brutalized by the Japanese, who left there in 1945 because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. United Nations changed their name from League of Nations to somehow United Nations to take advantage of the nuclear age. And then went in there and destroyed a country. Millions dead, millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions of orphans. And the North Koreans fought them off with sticks at the end of it. Still wouldn't give up. And so for 70 years now they've been ostracized from the entire planet because United Nations, which is their own heroes, their own fictional sadistic little world they live in. They're not uniting. They united you against an enemy that doesn't exist. North Korea hasn't attacked anybody. They were occupied for 50 years. They had a chance for freedom. They fought for it by the traitors, which was South Korea. South Korea is like Nazis, for goodness sakes, what they done back in those days. You know how many people they killed in South Korea because they sympathized with the North Koreans? You're talking about tens of thousands of people were killed. And all because of this weird cult known as United Nations. Conceived as a meeting, training, mobilization point, it brings together young activists from different countries. The reason they want the young activists is because they don't know nothing. They can't put up a fight. All they can do is follow. And the United Nations will be happy to lead them down the rocky road to history of humanity and the 8 million species. marks a historical precedent. It is the first international camp focused exclusively on youth. Wow. That's the lowest form of life. Organizations and cults in particular, like United Nations, are targeting your youths. United Nations Climate Change Conference. You mean the Radioactive Fallout Climate Change Conference? They don't want to tell you about. See, gas, oil, and coal emissions is carbon. Wherever carbon's to, there's more plants, more trees, more puppies, more babies, more pizzas. More trees, more fruits, more meadows, more insects. Wherever this is to, this attacks everything with replicating cells. This covers the whole planet. It pulses, every atom is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. So what's going to cause more harm? An invisible plume covering your entire planet for millions of years, for 80 already, hemorrhaging from over 1,000 fuel pools worldwide every day, like this. Way worse than this. This model is based on venting. It's not even based on the inventories that were lost. And oh my goodness, you have no idea how much was lost. You're talking about 9 reactor cores in each building. And there's 4 of them total. Let's go find the most vulnerable and gullible and put them on a pedestal where there's nothing but zeros at the United Nations. Join the World Nuclear Association at Conference of Parties / Constipated Party 30. They haven't done nothing in 30 years. They have accomplished nothing in 30 years. Now they're going for it. Now the big pool of money again, $1.3 trillion. They'll fix everything. You can go on about your life. Have a nice day. United Nations take care of you. They love you so much. Oh, they love you. They love you. Net Zero was a paper by Miles Allen, who got a cushy job at Cambridge. That paper was sucked up by United Nations, weaponized against humanity. And they don't want to acknowledge what the real problem is 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry. It's pretty convenient. They have so much money thrown at them from almost 200 countries every year. They fly around jet set. They got the biggest carbon footprint of any organization on the planet on top of that. Which was a public relation campaign by BP Oil, by the way, carbon footprint. It's some scam, man. Join the World Nuclear Association, which is a lobbying group. That's a nuclear lobbying group at Conference of Parties 30, Constipated Party 30. That's a lobbying group. A lobbying group. Yeah, they're taking 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive soil and growing food in it, shipping it worldwide. They've never stopped growing food in it. That's the batshit crazy thing to this story. The world doesn't realize, right, how much danger they're in. If you're new here, you've never seen last night's show, you're going to need to watch that later when you get a chance to. World Nuclear Association will be actively engaged. Like, we're trying to help the environment, not destroy it. Why is the Nuclear Association allowed there? All they do is they destroy everything with replicating cells. Hosting and facilitating a series of events. Net Zero, Nuclear Pavilion, Net Zero Pavilion. Miles Allen, is he getting a kickback every time that name is said at Winter Net Zero? Is he getting some kind of like royalty? This is a paper written, not backed up by any science. It's like carbon footprint was a public relations stunt by BP Oil after they contaminated Alaska with a massive oil spill. They wanted to blame it on you, and they did. The United Nations was like, whoo-hoo, we're taking that one, using it. United Nations is a weapon against humanity. turning the tripling nuclear pledge into a real-world progress. World Nuclear Association. Yeah, this is hilarious. The only small modular reactor they're building is 24-story building in Canada. 240-foot building. It's a 24-foot skyscraper. It's so big they're going to hide half of it underground. Even then it's still ridiculous looking. Here it is, like a 12-story building, because the other 12 stories are underground. But even when you say, like, here's our small modular reactor, it's a 12-story skyscraper. It's 50 feet bigger than Fukushima's reactors. Massive reactors on top of that. So if you had a small modular reactor, we wouldn't be building a 24-story skyscraper. Right? You know what I'm saying is right. That's what I do, unfortunately. I'm not even allowed to joke. How nuclear energy, alongside of renewables, like nuclear shouldn't be in the mix because you can't contain the emissions from the fuel pools. Every fuel pool, like if you take a reactor core and put it in a fuel pool, it's still splitting atoms for millions of homes and businesses that it was powering the day before. It's still splitting those same atoms. But now there's no containment. Not that there's actually containment for the reactor core, right? Remember, that can get burped out of the torus, and it does all the time. And that the pipes are all producing tritium-3H from external neutron bombardment, right? It's tritiating any moisture in the air and the water and everything else because the pipes are not 6 feet thick lead. It's a dirty industry, man. And it's now we're on the path to destruction because of Fukushima pulse event. It was going to happen anyway with 80 years of emissions. You got 1,000 fuel pools splitting atoms into your environment. So the point I was making was, 1,000 fuel pools with no containment, splitting atoms from millions of homes and businesses into your environment. And almost every one of them is surrounded by farms as far as you can see. How do you think that's going to play out? Nuclear is not the solution. Geothermal is the solution. Right? Geothermal is your solution. They actually exist. I know that sounds crazy. Something that exists. Why use that, you're asking? Clearly, nuclear industry will silence this video and every other video, and always have and always will, because they can't argue against the truth. They can't win that debate with anybody. If you bring this debate to the nuclear industry in the coffee rooms or anywhere else, they'll start crying. Like, you don't understand. I was like, no, you're a lawyer. You won't be honest. Clean, cheap energy looks like a political winner. Geothermal is your solution, right? And we have technologies that dig way, or drill way deeper, way quicker than conventional drills can do. Like quasi-electric, for instance. Baseload power, Taiwan secures tribal consent for geothermal exploration and development. Taiwan had moved all the natives out to Orchard Island. Far, far away from Taiwan, by the way. And Taiwan put up their nuclear reactors. And after a little while, they had this nuclear waste starting to accumulate. And they understood that, they're a little island, they're all going to get polluted. So they went to the natives' island, where they stuck them to, on Orchard Island. And they asked them, could they build a canning factory for tuna and salmon and fish? And everybody would get a stipend each month, like a paycheck each month. They don't have to do nothing. Just let us build our canning factory for canning seafood. Natives were like, sure, hell yeah, why not? That's fantastic, woohoo! And so they built a nuclear dump there and went on for years and years. They were lugging all kinds of nuclear waste there. And one day, the native community was like, wait a second. This is not a canning factory, a nuclear dump. They're like, aha, too late. You signed the papers for 99 years. Idiots. That's how they treated them. They treated them exactly like that. They literally mocked them. Well, you should read what you're signing. Too bad. That's the nuclear industry everywhere you look, by the way. That routine. It's been going on now for 80 years. Constipated Priority 30 kicks off in Brazil. Focuses on mobilizing $1.3 trillion. $1.3 trillion. 1.3. They'll do some jet setting around the world, that kind of coin. They'll accomplish nada. Because they're not going to go after the real issue, which is radioactive fallout. From 1,000 fuel pools, all the dumping in the ocean and everything. And then Fukushima, the pulse event. See, the visible plume, instead of a snowstorm, instead of a radioactive plume, think of a snowstorm covering the whole planet. The snow never melts, never stops snowing, and never goes away. That's radiation, been going on for 80 years. And unlike carbon, which is more trees, more birds, more insects, more plants, more trees, more puppies, more boobies. Instead of going, it doesn't go away for millions of years. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light is the anthropogenic man-made. And look at it. There's no other element on the planet. There's no other industry on the planet creates plumes that covers the planet. This is only 20 days. Oh, very good. 20 days. Yeah, very good. If you want to exterminate a planet, it's the perfect technique. You don't need nuclear meltdowns or nuclear accidents or nuclear dumping. Lord knows you've done absurd amount of that for 30 years unmitigated. And they want $1.3 trillion to fix a great big planet. Why are they so anal about controlling every facet of everybody's life on the entire planet? Who are these creeps? They don't speak for me, and they don't speak for you. They don't speak for anybody. They're just another bunch of weirdos. With nothing but bad intentions. International Atomic Energy Agency, at Conference of Parties 30, Nuclear Energy Technology Science Shaping a Sustainable Future. How can nuclear be sustainable? How does that work? The emissions from the fuel pools will wipe out everything on the planet. Excuse me. Atoms for Climate is the furthest thing from the truth. It's the very furthest thing from the truth. Atoms for Climate is the definition of insane people. Atoms for Corruption, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. Hang on here. Durka. Oh yeah, here we go. There's another facet to think about the 1,000 fuel pools worldwide at all the nuclear plants. This little doohickey I'm going to show you right now. There's another facet about nuclear power plants that is quite unique. You'll never hear this story anywhere else on the planet. So hang around for at least a few more minutes. Now, first off, I want you to appreciate the fact that they know that food, farms suck up radiation, okay? So then the question would be, why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms? When they know that not just grapes, not just strawberries, but every species, any plant can monitor radiation, and it monitors it like tomato plants will suck up not just cesium, not just strontium, not just zirconium isotopes, and they are nasty ones, by the way. And the same thing with potatoes, the same thing with any plant. So why would almost every nuclear power plant be surrounded by farms? Is that an accident? Is that a coincidence? Maybe that's what it is. It's a coincidence. That the worst thing you can do is surround a nuclear power plant with farms, but yet that's what almost every single nuclear power plant on the planet is surrounded by, is farms. Does anybody really think that's an accident? That's just a coincidence? And the fact that very tiny amounts of radiation, right, is catastrophic to everybody. For 50 atoms a kilogram of cesium-137, irreversible heart damage for children, well, what do you think is going to happen to the birds and insects and mammals and animals? And 50 atoms a kilogram, that's what a becquerel is a physical atom pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second, is permanent lesions to the adult's organs at 50 atoms a kilogram / becquerels. So why is every farm, except for a couple, surrounded by farms, typically as far as you can see? Why is that? Why is that? How can that be an accident? The fuel pools can't be contained at all of these sites. So what happens is all the radiation hemorrhaging from the fuel pools up those tall, skinny stacks ends up immediately, the heavy stuff will end up huge amounts in the food in these productive areas. They ship the food out to the supermarkets far away so they can get you too. But the chances are the radioactive fallout will cover the whole planet, not just it's not just a local area. You know what I mean? So let me give you an example of how and I know that's quite a few examples there, but I got another example here I want to. Well, here's an important example. Japan never stopped growing food in a nuclear wasteland. The food was banned by 55 countries in half of Japan. And the reason being is because that's what evil does. The nuclear industry, all nuclear plants are already surrounded by farms. Just because you got a nuclear meltdown covering the entire planet, don't let that stop an evil industry from poisoning everybody. And when you look at the reality of it, they know everything about radiation. There's literally nothing they don't know about radiation. They studied that more than the elements from the solar system by orders of magnitude. So they know every facet of it. There's nothing they don't know. I can sit here for weeks and weeks and weeks, 24 hours a day if I can stay awake, and just do this of man-made isotope studies. They know everything about it. There is no atoms for climate. It's atoms for genocide and atoms for kickback, as James' song, right? Which was appropriate. But here's if you zoom out to a satellite picture, that's Sellafield, England, reprocesses all the fuel for many countries, not just the United Kingdom, by the way. And then that's a satellite picture. Do you think that's an accident? France will look exactly like that, by the way. And the majority of the nuclear power plants worldwide will look the exact same if you zoom out from a satellite picture. You'll realize this industry is out to murder you. And I mean that from the deepest part of my heart, because when you look at all these studies, and how many times have I done this over the years? And if you want to look at how much influence they got, come to my page, my front page. As you can see, I'm a researcher. I do a lot of field studies. And go to playlist, and that's a great video. I just have last night's video is a very important video. So go to that last night and click on this one here, but also click on the full playlist from the next one, mass species die-offs. So I audited Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and Harvard universities, presentations on Fukushima after it happened. It took me 3 hours and 30 minutes to cover the lies in Stanford's video, 3 hours and 17 minutes to cover all the lies, to challenge the lies in MIT's, and 4 hours and 14 minutes to challenge the lies of Harvard's video. They told so many lies to protect the nuclear industry. And so I audited, I've done this originally, that first year, of course. And if you come in here, I got over 50 52 videos on species die-off. I got another massive one ready to go. There's a very important video right there. And all of these are recent die-offs. There's 52 videos. And the majority of these are emaciated animals. Not majority, but all of them are emaciated species due to the radioactive fallout. And so they sent to me, I keep coming back. Should the nuclear power be banned worldwide to preserve and restore Earth's ability to produce and sustain life? Well, it's self-explanatory of why we do what we do. And what we do is probably the most thankless job on the planet. I'm starting to think James might have the most thankless job on the planet, wouldn't you? But he's like me. He's in it for the right reason, the moral reason. He's taken the moral high ground. My research expeditions, the species to your left are exterminated. I went back for 6 years. I went back for 5 extra years because the species to your left were gone. These are my research. Now, like, you got to realize I've done 27,000 islands for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year, without coming home. It took forever to put this whole operation together in the context of the urgency was to get out there. And I had always thought that when I finally got out there, because I'm an ex-commercial diver and I'm very familiar with the whole coastline, Alaska to Vancouver, British Columbia, I always thought I would find an oasis. And to my absolute horror, there was no oasis left. I just went out and meandered through 27,000 islands 4 to 5 months a year, doing species counts. Your species are now exterminated. They were there in 2011. The Canadian, the world still refuses to acknowledge that those species are gone. But we done it for 5 extra years to see if they recovered. And that destroyed me. I should never have had to do that, by the way. I wasn't very healthy then. Oh, on a good note, I had ordered a sauna off Amazon for, it wasn't very much, $100-something. And I had ordered a lamp, a red light lamp, red light therapy. And that showed up today. I've been doing calisthenics every day for the last week or something since I ordered that stuff. And so to my absolute surprise, the sauna worked perfect. It's a 1,600 watt steamer. And so I was in there for 30 minutes. And then I done almost 1,200 calisthenics before I went in there. Then I jumped in the sauna. And then done the red light therapy for 10 minutes on each side. So I'm going to be doing that every day from here on out to see if I can last another little while, just to beat the shit out of the nuclear industry. And you know what? It felt so good. Like the last number of days doing the calisthenics, I was really stiff, right? Everything hurts. But after getting in the sauna for 30 minutes and then getting under the red light for both sides, I felt great after. I love it. I'm just, I gained all my weight in 1 year. I went from being 155, 160 my whole life to boom. After I moved to the East Coast of doing all those research expeditions, right, my thyroid gland was destroyed. And that destroys your morals, too, when that happens to you that way, right? Just bear with me. Let me get back on track here. It's madness trying to do these shows. Just trying to put them together is madness, so you have to excuse me. There's a lot goes on in the preambles. Just stringing everything together, finding the whole stories, getting it told. Don't forget what Japan done to you, by the way. Japan exterminated those species. Not your tin cans, not your pop bottles, not your cardboard. International Atomic Energy Agency. So I'm very grateful that worked. I'm pretty sure I'm going to feel pretty rough tomorrow morning when I wake up. But I'll just start the calisthenics again. And then I'm going back into the sauna. The sauna takes about 10, 15 minutes. Man, that thing cooking. That thing cooks you. I was sweating after 2 minutes. I was sweating hard. And then after the red light therapy, it felt amazing. So I got high hopes anyway. I'll keep that up. I keep it up because I got to. Until someone can replace me, I'm going to have to keep trying to fight back. I still need to change everything in my kitchen. Right, I gotta also get the right foods. I gotta get rid of the junk. I haven't got much junk anyway, you know me. But I've been limited, right? But I need to. That's my next step coming down the road is going to be to change out my diet to accommodate the new regime that I'm on. I think this will give me more energy to do what I'm doing. Atoms for Climate. It's the craziest thing ever, man. Nuclear wasn't there until Conference Party 28, right? And they went all in, man. Oh, there's got to be a nuclear renaissance. And there is no nuclear renaissance. You got the same gigawatts now as you had in the 90s, for goodness sakes. What are you talking about? Nuclear renaissance. You don't got a small modular reactor. You don't even got a decent reactor. And the new small modular reactor is the same as the old large reactor, except it's 50 feet taller. And it's the same boiling water reactor design. There is no small modular reactor. There wouldn't be 100 companies out there. There's no fusion. Like the joke, of fusion was always you're 50 years away. It's still true today in the world in 50 years' time. International Atomic Energy Agency experts, the traitors of humanity, the sellouts, the cowards, right? The people that are stopping the world from having a future. Will be a hand to answer questions, really, from who? No one like me is going to be down there. You're not going to answer questions for me on a video, I can tell you that much. And make presentations. But there's not no descending voices there. $500,000 for a pavilion. $500,000. So you can hang out for 10 days. $500,000. Yeah, that sounds like a free and equitable conference to everybody. You can't even rent a room there for less than a couple of $1,000s a night. They're actually using for the poorer nations, delegates. They call them delegates, make them feel important, I suppose. They're using a cruise ship. All the hotels are taken up by the IAEA and UN because they don't pay for nothing. They got 195, almost 200 countries throwing money at them, and they still can't create anything. The Atoms for Climate, with a virtual address by no less than Grossi himself. Really, he's not. He must be somewhere else. Where else is Grossi going to be? How come he's not down there? He's terrified to go down there, is he? Or what other scam has he got going? I don't know. International Atomic Energy Agency presence at Conference of Parties 30 will spotlight nuclear energy's role in the clean energy transition and how nuclear science is creating solutions to environmental challenges. Are you crazy? Nuclear science to environmental challenges. This is the environmental challenge. Is the radioactive failure for 80 years. This model is only 20 days. Imagine what's been going on for 80 years, for goodness sakes. This is from a single facility. Hanford dumped 450 billion gallons directly into the soil of nuclear sludge, dehydrated waste during the Manhattan Project. So this stuff is still splitting atoms forever. 450 billion gallons is equal to an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet of nuclear waste. Oh, no, Dan, it can all fit in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, right? You picked up 30 million one-ton bags in Japan. You probably dumped 6 times that into the rivers and the estuaries and the ocean. According to the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, immigrants that don't speak the language that work there. It wasn't nuclear scientists. The International Atomic Energy Agency will lead a United Nations FCCC side event on financing strategies for low-carbon energy sources. Anything but geothermal. Anything but proper storage. Well, batteries, oh sure, we give you all the money you want. What do you want, $1 billion? Sure, here you go. No, we want a compressed air down in the mine shafts. I'm sorry, we haven't got no money left over. We gave it all to the battery guys. Batteries, are useless, by the way. And once they got, got a 3, 4, 5 year shelf life at best. Geothermal, you can store energy, by the way. But compressed air storage, that'll last for 50 years, not 3 years. You can have windmills. That's all they do is compress air, for goodness sakes. There's lots of systems out there who are doing that. Lava rocks will store heat for a decade, so to speak, right? In the right conditions. It'll store the heat for months and months and months without any other adjustments. So it can store up to 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. Sand will store, we got lots of sand. It will store energy for about 4 to 6 weeks easy. 700 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So there's lots of ways to store energy. Building on the outcome of the first global stock take at Conference of Parties 28. The global stock take at Conference of Parties 28. This is where they come out and said that we're going to have a nuclear renaissance. Here we are a couple of years later, and there's no sign of it at all. The small modular reactors is absurd, accelerating deployment of small modular reactors that don't even exist. Right? None of them have an application into the regulatory agencies. You're talking about 2 million pieces of paper, by the way. Right? The only one that had a semi-application in NuScale is not a full application. This could take 10, 15 years before they actually start to build a model of them, like a first try. You still got to get all the kinks out of that. 20, 25 years down the road, you might be able to start taking orders. Geothermal is under everybody's foot on the entire planet. It's right there. And there's a number of breakthrough geothermal companies that have the techniques to drill that extra deep, the extra couple of kilometers deep, right? And Quatsi Electric literally atomizes aerosols or evaporates the rocks ahead of the drill, right? Makes it a lot easier for the drill. And then there's another company that uses 25,000 pounds per square inch water jets to split the rocks, to slice up the rocks. Because down deep, the rocks are really hot and they're hard on the drill bits, right? So this other company has 25,000 pounds per square inch water jets will slice up the rocks, and then behind that is a pneumatic hammer, and then behind that, at the same time, is ejecting water, and there's a vacuum. So you're slicing up everything, you're crushing everything, and then you're vacuuming it up, blah, blah, blah. And then the drill bit comes behind that. That's 6 times faster than the best drill bits we got on the planet can do. On top of that. So if you mass produce that, you can have geothermal up and running worldwide in no time at all. It's not like it's a never-ending job or something. Right? You just got to replace the gas, oil, and coal, particularly the nuclear on the planet. Nuclear is only 300 380 gigawatts or something. Solar last year was 660 gigawatts on its own in 12 months versus 80 years of nuclear. It can be done, and it can be done right away, too. Right? If you backed up solar power with storage and geothermal, for every solar plant had a geothermal plant to replace it, and then you had storage, then you can handle peak loads each day for 4 or 5 hours, right? With a very simple system. Canada had 760 renewable projects just in Ontario, Canada. There was $5.4 billion allocated for the renewable industry to build storage. And then they decided they wanted a nuclear renaissance, so they got rid of that 3 years ago. They closed all of them down. 760 renewable projects and gave the $5.4 billion to Bruce Power for storage, a nuclear power plant, of all things. They scuttled it, right? I mean, that's one of the dirtiest, grossest things you can think about that nuclear has done recently. The nuclear industry done it to them. Because $5.4 billion was $7, $8, $9 million for each of those companies for storage. They would have went ahead and done it. You wouldn't have need nuclear then, see? And now Canada's going to build the world's first small modular reactor, and it's a massive skyscraper, 24-story building. They're going to put half of it underground, but even then it's going to be humiliating to call it a small modular reactor. It's absurd. Nuclear industry doesn't have a small modular reactor, or they wouldn't be building a 24-story building in Canada, of all places. So there is no small modular reactor. It simply doesn't exist. The Canadian small modular reactor is a skyscraper. It's a skyscraper. The International Atomic Energy Agency vent. They won't look at anything on nuclear. It has to be nuclear. It can't be anything else. We don't have nuclear right now. Well, that's okay. We don't have fusion. We're still working on that. We'll get at some point, Dana. It could be 50 or 100 years, but that's the way we're going to go. We signed the papers. That's our memorandum of understandings. Geothermal exists. Storage exists. Compressed air storage exists. Lava rocks exist. Why are you trying to build something when you have something right there at your fingertips? Why you got to scuttle and sabotage the entire planet? Why do you have to do that? You're not united. You're a death cult that has captured a lot of government agencies in 195 countries. You don't have the consensus of 195 countries. You're not holding referendums in 195 countries, because you would get to 6 right away. You're going about it the most evil and sadistic and sneaky way you can. And you're taking the most cowardly route you can, because you can't handle any light shining on you. That's why I'm censored so heavy all the time. United Nations cannot handle a bright light. They can't win a debate with anybody that's rational. They have controlled opposition where there is no debate, but if you put someone like me in front of them, they wet their pants. So here they are cooking up ways to finance something. They don't even have an application for the regulatory agency to fund. They don't have a supply chain. They don't even have the welders. Atoms for net zero. Oh, they got atoms for everything, man. Atoms for hemorrhoids. They used to be a radioactive suppository. The industry's entire legacy is so crazy. It's so crazy. Let me show you another one. You'll love this one. Hang around. Don't leave yet. Bear with me. I can't find everything flickety-squick. There's supposed to be 5 people running my equipment, not Dana. Lucky for me, I'm mutated and have 5 arms, but... there we go. If you look at the entire history of the nuclear industry, if you go way back in the day, atoms for net zero, don't forget where we left off. Net zero, by the way, is you. Radium spray company, that's one of the scariest things you've ever seen. A liquid cleaner and polisher. This is why I won't buy antiques, because this sold like hotcakes back in the day. Will polish and clean furniture, buggies, automobiles, marble, Doesn't this sound like the old carpetbagger to you? I'll cure everything. Brass, nickel, carpet, rugs. So antiques are very dangerous, because this stuff got a half-life of 5,000 years. Can you imagine typewriters, putting radium on your typewriters? And the industry knew exactly what they were doing. They just knew people were stupid and complacent, right? And would put their fate. Cash registers and many other things not mentioned. Anything. Mosquitoes, roaches, bed bugs. Imagine spraying radium in your bed. Imagine doing that now and being caught at it and convicted of it. Imagine the whole world would spit on you every time they heard your name. Radium spray is liquid. No, it's not a liquid cleaner. It's not a polisher. But it was sold to everybody as that. Radium light bulbs, you bet. Radium heaters, can you imagine how many people died from that exposure? Radium hand cleaner, can you imagine how twisted you got to be to do that one? That's nutty for these guys. Radium foot warmers. Radium shaving blades. These were maniacs, man. Radium toothpaste. Radium for beauty, toiletry, radium water. All of these closed down because people were dying in mass, and they were being sued, and they had to close down because of what they were doing. Radium chocolates, radium suppositories, radium lipstick, radium makeup for children, targeting children, right? This industry has always done the same thing. They've taken every isotope and said they're going to cure this and cure that with it. Never it ever worked. Well, don't worry, we got another 10,000 isotopes. One of them will work. It's called human experiments. They know it's not going to work. It's never worked. There's no redeeming qualities unless you're trying to exterminate everybody, or you're just a sadistic group of people that attract more sadistic groups of people. That's the only way you can really describe the nuclear industry, when you're honest and when you're sincere. Really, like radium lipstick, radium makeup, radium necklaces for the children, radium hand wash. Like the radium... that radium legacy is like no other, right? There's nothing else compared to that kind of sickness. Hang on here. Where's that other one, though, we were looking at? Oh, it's down. I screwed up or what? What's going on here? 1 second. We're almost finished here. Oh, yeah. This is Maniacs by... Combination bug killer, disinfectant, and furniture polish. This is terrorism, isn't it? Doctor says radium stops the agony of rheumatism. Yeah, if a doctor says it, must be true. You want to see the list of doctors that went to jail for crimes against humans? I got there. It's incredible. The lunatic, the retards, the International Atomic Energy Agency will also spotlight how nuclear and isotopic techniques reveal the potential of blue carbon. What the hell is blue carbon? What is blue carbon? Hello, everybody. So and biodiversity, the importance of preserving coastal ecosystems, International Atomic Energy, really. And the biodiversity, you wiped out the biodiversity, you wiped out that ecosystem. And my research expeditions for 6 years are unassailable. And all of the die-offs we talk about in my playlist I showed you earlier, just go to the playlist of species die-offs, are the recent die-offs. It's an extinction event. That's what nuclear fallout is. And they're down there trying to pretend that they have a single redeeming quality. Shows you how dangerous they actually are. Conference of Parties is proof of how dangerous this industry and unforgiving and unrelenting this industry actually is. It's fixated on being as evil as it can be. They must sit around brainstorming, saying, what's the evilest thing we can do here? What's the evilest thing we can do there? Then they'll go ahead and do that. Fukushima revival, Indian planners are boosting visitation surge. Indian planners. India and Japan deepen ties with surging tourist numbers, notably to the nuclear wasteland of wastelands. 2 Indian planners, that's them there in the bottom, stupid and stupider, they're actually based out of Fukushima, which is inside of ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns. I've never seen or heard of anything else that can compete with the evilness of the nuclear industry. And their control on your universities and your medias worldwide are just surreal. No dissenting voices allowed. According to the Japanese tourism agency, 230,000 Indian tourists visited Japan from January to September, a 37% increase from previous year, surpassing the forecast for 2024. To shit, that's a nice name, that's an appropriate name, try shit, Banerjee, and Swastika Harsh Jaju, boat managers at a Fukushima, which is, Fukushima is right alongside the nuclear meltdowns. How can United Nations Oceans Conference not include the emissions from these buildings that are lost their inventories on day 5? How can they pretend? How can they do that though, right? And then how can the media not challenge their fake narratives? Because they work together. Fukushima Area Tourism Research Association are instrumental in promoting Fukushima. Fukushima, a no-go zone, a nuclear wasteland. But people that celebrate with shit pies is a step up for them, I guess. Paris Agreement architect says absence of the United States is good for Conference of Parties 30. They got so much money to build these absurd-looking structures. They got money to burn. In the 30 years, how much money, what's their carbon footprint for all the delegates, and all the hoo-haing, and all the jet setting, everybody flying there for 30 years, all over the world, different countries, living in the best hotels, eating the best caviar, and the best this and the best that, and drinking the best wines, and with their $5,000 suits. What's the carbon footprint for 30 years of this routine, I wonder? It's just a big party every year for 10 days. And they have parties like the press doesn't get invited to. They have parties for the press, and then delegates will leave there and go real parties where just the most sadistic, wildest stuff you ever heard tell of. Even Hollywood couldn't do it justice. Focusing on Objective 16, promoting resilient health services, Conference of Parties 30 Health Day will convene a ministerial Health Preliminary on the 13th of November. It's an appropriate day, isn't it? On this occasion, Brazil will officially launch the Belém Health Action Plan for the adaptation of the health sector to climate change. What the hell is that? What kind of whack shit is this? The Belém Health Action Plan, like if you go to Brazil, the first thing you do is take all your jewelry off. Second thing is you live in constant fear every second you're there. For the adaptation, and they're supposed to be in charge of health? I'm going to say it again. Belém Health Action Plan for the adaptation of the health sector to climate change. The climate change acceleration post-Fukushima is extraordinary. The storms are extraordinary post-Fukushima. We're gusting 80 down here, and we had something like 50 millimeters of rain today in 24 hours. Today is not over, but the plan is founded on the principle of equality and climate justice. These people are insane, eh? Climate justice. And there's no rational voices allowed. You gotta regurgitate what they say or you don't exist. Excuse me. It's very interesting. Which countries have sent the most delegates to Conference of Parties, Constipated Party 30? 30 years of doing nothing. I suck in 195 countries dry and wrecking the planet. That's the real legacy, unfortunately, and sadly, and pathetically, and horrifically, and humiliatingly. For the first time in the history of Constipated Party climate summits, the United States, the world's largest historical emitter, has not sent a delegation to the talks. I don't think the United States is the biggest emitter. I think it's United Nations. With all the scams they're pulling off on top of that, they surpass every country probably on the planet. And back in January, U.S. President Donald Trump signed a letter to UN to trigger the start of the withdrawal. You can't withdraw from the Paris Agreement. It takes you a whole year. Why does it take a year? Because they need that money, see? They need that money to cook up another scam. You got 195 countries giving them money they should never have access to. Because with that money comes a lot of influence, the ability to buy thousands of lobbyists. Back in January, it takes over a year. The process is not complete, so pay up, USA. The White House confirmed earlier this month that no high-level officials will be attending Constipated Party in Brazil. Which is, there's only Afghanistan, Myanmar, San Marino, and United States. 191 other countries are there sending delegates. They're the only countries not registering a delegation for the summit. A delegation. Really, if I go to a meeting, I'm a delegation. I'm a delegate, am I? If you come here tonight, you're a delegate, by the way. Bless your hearts, you're a delegate. I'm delicate. I'm delicate. I scratched myself the other day. You should see, I'm so delicate. They got to give themselves these titles to try to make themselves feel important because in the real life, they know they're just degenerate lowlifes, right? According to the carbon briefs, like suggesting that carbon is an issue, how can, like if we don't got carbon, we look like the moon, stupid. Carbon's your friend. Radioactive fallout is your enemy. Analysts had a provisional list of delegates published by United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Despite the absences, 56,000 useful idiots have signed up to attend Conference of Parties 30 in person, provisionally placing the summit as one of the largest And so why would he use COP, the word COP, right, to get themselves artificial authority, see? They're targeting the vulnerable and the young. So to the vulnerable and the young, the word COP means something, see? But these chicken necks, these weirdos, these creeps, these freaks of nature, / delegates, are trying to make decisions that will affect you for the rest of your lives and destroy your future for a death cult known as United Nations. This is despite the run-up to the negotiations being dogged by reports of a shortage of beds and sky-high accommodation costs. Well, it's not reports, it's facts. It's not just because it's dogged. It's like framing it that way doesn't do it justice. Brazil even offered free cabins on cruise ships to delegations from low-income nations who were otherwise unable to attend. Yet they need the consensus, eh? Low-income nations who are otherwise unable to attend. Yeah, because they got to give United Nations and their subsidies all kinds of money every single year. They don't have enough money left over to attend. 193 countries plus the European Union have registered a delegation for the summit. I'll show you the schematics of that. Unsurprisingly, the largest delegation comes from Brazil with over 3,800. Brazil's just a shithole, man. Like the majority of Brazil live within sight of the wealthy, and the wealthy, like the police down there, are just, the corruption there is absurd. And they go to all these different countries each year and they have a big party, great time, a good time. Looks like I'm offline. Looks like they kicked me offline. Bloods of bitches. No descending voices allowed. Wow. So I'm not streaming? Am I streaming? Just hang on for a second. Yeah, thanks, Dana. Let's keep going. Okay, thanks, Pete. So, the following in order by China, Nigeria, Indonesia, Democratic Republic. Yeah, well, you see what was on my screen just now, right? I actually lost the internet. I have fiber optics at 1 gigabyte a second up and 1 gigabyte a second down. YouTube only needs 5.6 megabytes. How could I lose connection, see? Let's get into these numbers anyway. 56,000. So this is the total attendance over the years for the last 30 years. And they have an interactive map. But they actually have a list. Here's your list. A partial list, I guess. But that same story, you can go to that page and you'll find, you can click on those different colors and they'll give you lists. Like that one up there, you can see Canada, 220 delegates, so-called useful idiots. France sent 530 useful idiots. United Kingdom sent 210 useful idiots. Kenya, 332. Just interesting information for down the road to look back on, right? Let's keep her going here. These include charities like the World Wildlife Fund, Ocean Conservancy, Water Aid, and these are the people who refuse to acknowledge my research expeditions for 6 years. I'm not going to take you through all of it because what's the point? I will put it up there in case you do want it. There was 8 from YouTube, 8 delegates from YouTube are at the UN climate change, which suggests that we're going to be not allowed to criticize UN without getting censored on YouTube, right? COP30 UNESCO calls for urgent action to accelerate green schools. Again, they go after the kids, right? You see this constantly with United Nations trying to control the kids, trying to separate them from the parents. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. They also have I can't remember now. UNICEF is United Nations. Like, they have infiltrated every facet of everybody's life, but they're structured the same as McDonald's. They have no sovereignty over any country. They just happen to have enough money coming in to buy off politicians, and then by proxy take over facets of your country. Formed just after Nagasaki, Hiroshima. What a coincidence. Oh, that's right. UN has all these subsidies, right? They're all UN, though, ultimately. Like, for the nuclear industry, they got UNSCLEAR and IRPA and the IPRC and the International Atomic Energy Agency. They all pretend they're separate agencies, but they're the same people in each committee. So when people who don't know any better read about it in the media, and IAEA gets backed up by UNSCLEAR and backed up by IRPA and the IPRC, right, they seem legit, but they're the same people and the same people for each committee. Right? It's 100% criminal. It's a Ponzi scheme. 96,000 schools in 93 countries adopted the green practice. But why? They can't adopt their own? They got to be United Nations or nothing else? You got any idea how insane that actually is? How insanely maddening that actually is? Recommended by UNESCO to address the climate crisis created by the nuclear industry. They're going to use nuclear, they say, to fix the climate change, which is the most absurd thing imaginable. 80 years of emissions. And what, you're going to have another 80 years of emissions is going to fix what that done, really? Well, I'm not going to sit and take it. I'm not going to lie down and take it. I'm not going to pretend that you're good people for even 2 seconds when I can prove unequivocally that you're a criminal organization. Right? I'm not going to sit there and take it from anything attached to the UN, that's for sure, period. UNESCO supports countries in integrating climate education into the curriculum, teachers training, school system. They have access to your entire infrastructures in 195 countries. Yet they have no sovereignty over any country. Don't you think that's a little stupid? Don't you think that's a little dangerous? Don't you think that's irresponsible and reckless? I do. I can prove why it is. Since establishment 3 years ago, post-Fukushima, we take over the whole world. Nothing else matters. Each year we see corruptions and a loss of liberties and freedom and the death of the species thanks to the United Nations subsidies. You know, after Fukushima, we launched these research expeditions. The species to your left are exterminated post-Fukushima because of the radioactive fallout. And we didn't just zoom up the coastline and zoom back. I got the shit kicked out of me for 4 to 5 months each year by myself, doing species counts, and I was vilified and demonized and smeared, marginalized, attacked by a very well-funded organization. The whole time I was on the ocean, I couldn't defend myself a single time. I'm just trying to do the right thing. Everything I do is backed up by documentation. And the burden of proof on me is bigger than anybody else on the planet. I have to prove everything I say. Because it's an educational program. That's the right thing to do, isn't it? And it's the hardest job. The hardest thing you can do is provide evidence for just about everything you say. Species to your left are exterminated. Not because I spent 6 years 6 years out there looking for them, and they're exterminated. They were there in 2011. They were there when I was a commercial diver. Fukushima radioactive fallout, as I showed you earlier at the very beginning, actually happened. This actually happened to us. Excuse me. Highly radioactive glass rained down on Tokyo. Would you eat food from Fukushima prefecture knowing there was 500 trillion atoms a kilogram? A significant consequence for human health is an understatement. Highly radioactive glass. I don't know if glass is the right word. We're facing a fishery disaster, very never seen before things. Extinction threat for salmon, sardines, squid, sea urchins, kelp, starfish. I quantified that by doing research expeditions for 6 years. And I was the only person reporting publicly every time I came ashore, in whichever port I was going into to fuel up in and get groceries. I would be doing radio interviews and blog interviews and posting videos documenting it all. And so they took my site down with 25,000 subscribers. Well, I had 24,800 subscribers for 5 years almost. Never gained one, never lost one. Because I was out on the ocean, couldn't defend myself. They've done a pretty good job of destroying my reputation. Permanently, by the way. But I'm still here. I'm still here for the fight. I'm not a coward. I'm not like the nuclear industry. I back up my assertions with evidence and field studies. Because I think it's important that in order to do an educational program, you have to do that, right? Excuse me. Okay, and so I want you to think about this. There was 26 dead whales. There was 2 found right away, killer whales, and the rest 24 other ones were found 2 weeks later. So the original, this was the picture we had, but that's clearly an emaciated killer whale. You can't probably notice it, but because I've been at this a long time, you can see the peanut head, but you can see the shoulder blade and rib cage sticking up. That's simply not the way it's supposed to be. And then when you look at the rest of the whales they showed you, you can see the severe emaciation on the tail. That's a very... But there was 26 dead whales, but they only showed you a couple of pictures like this. Not 26 pictures. Even though they had access to the whales. The biggest die-off killer whales in history, and they only had 6 reports of it. And most of the pictures were completely useless. Recently, a few days back, we had a humpback whale show up. It was alive when it came ashore. This is the most severe emaciated animal imaginable. This is absurd emaciation we're talking about. The spinal cord protruding from the body. Rib cages. I've never seen anything that bad. Until recently, all the whales are showing up like this because we broke the food chain from Fukushima. I've never seen anything like that until recently, the last month or so. Now we're seeing severe emaciation. That was a humpback whale before. This is a bride's whale. That's an emaciated bride's whale right there, by the way. This is a bride's whale too. Well, look how bad this one is. And we're seeing so many whales like that. And even killer whales. This was a Belgian killer whale. Look at this guy. Severe emaciated tail, but you can see the peanut head clearly, even though you're on the wrong side. You can see the shoulder blades. You can see all the rib cages poking up. And it looks like a deflated balloon, right? The food chain is broken. My research expeditions clearly showed that. But now what we're seeing is the acceleration of starvation in all species, in the oceans in particular. It's not just the Pacific, it's all oceans. And it's all species of whales. So when you compare these two broad whales, even though the one to your left is emaciated, this is not cool at all. This is bad stuff. This is bad news for Earth. And so when I see atoms for climate, that upsets me. It disturbs me, to say the least. But it really upsets me. All the gray whales are emaciated. They were all emaciated last year, heading south. Now this year, they're emaciated. In fact, they're so emaciated, there's 14,000 died since Fukushima. Of the 27,000, there's 13,000 left. The ones that are left in such poor conditions, and they got to throw in the turd in the punch bowl of climate change. Climate change is 80 years of emission from the nuclear industry. The whales were already in poor shape last fall to begin their 12,000-mile migration. They were showing up starving, emaciated all along the migratory route, which is 12,000 miles. The whales we're seeing now are extremely emaciated. They're probably gone. The rest of the gray whales will probably be gone. They won't make it to Baja, Mexico next year. They won't show up. They were so emaciated last year, they barely got edited this year. They're showing up everywhere emaciated. And the total number of ship strikes since 2006 is 1,200. That don't mean all the whales died. You have 7,000 humpback whales that are extra on top of an unusual mortality event emaciated. You had 1,000 culvert beak whales in the United Kingdom where they don't even belong, show up in different stages of decomposition, but severely emaciated. And you're only going to find 1 in 10 if you're really lucky. So that means 10,000. We're seeing the same thing with sperm whales. We're seeing the same thing with fin whales and blue whales. Why the industry is out there trying to promote in desperation more of the reasons the species are gone is radiation failure. So atoms for climate is just utter contempt. And they don't have any regrets for what they've done on top of that. They don't have a morsel of remorse for the carnage they've inflicted for 80 years. This is the French government. The French government itself, 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of radioactive of air over the entire planet in 23 days. 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima numbers of cesium-137. So think of an invisible snowstorm covering the entire planet, and each snowflake is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. It never stops snowing, and the snow never melts. And they call it radiation, and that there's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Like a single atom in your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, whether you're a bird, a mammal, an animal, or a human, or anything else. So the radiation's in your body, it pulses energy, your body attacks it with white blood cells. It also attacks the damage each second from the Becquerel, from the explosion. And that's what they do. They pulse energy every second at the speed of light in every direction. So you reckon all the chromosomes, molecules, and DNA and cells, your body can't keep up with it, but it's going to try to repair the damage every second. And it floods the source, because the source pulses in every direction. And so as you bioaccumulate this, and you're bioaccumulated in numbers you can't even wrap your mind around, most likely, right, you're more lethargic, you have less energy, you don't recover from flus or illnesses or cuts as quick as you used to, because you have less red blood cells, which carry oxygen nutrition. And so if you cut your finger, white blood cells will fix it in 5 or 6 days. And for every white blood cell, you displace a red blood cell. So after 5 or 6 days, your red blood cell count comes back up to normal. But with radiation, you never gain back the red blood cells, because your body with anthropogenic man-made radiation in it, the atoms, the radioactive fall that covers your entire planet, for all the species, this is true, right? You bioaccumulate it, that means less red blood cells every time. It's an instant and permanent catastrophic injury to your body every second for the rest of your life. Your body has no way of mitigating that, right? Right. So what's the story here? Okay, let me get a handle on this. The grey whales will be gone next year, all of them. They're all emaciated. There was no surviving babies last year on the migratory route north. We're seeing the same attributes in all the species. How can you look at a nuclear power plant and call it carbon-free? How does that work? It's the biggest construction site on the planet in history. No, it's carbon-free, didn't it? Oh, yeah, okay, haha. Atoms for climate. Atoms for kickback, as James liked to say. Alrighty, let me see what we got going on here. Well, let me just cover one more facet, one more important facet. If you made it this far, please consider giving us a thumbs up. Costs us very little, goes a long way, maybe. Last night they censored my thumbs up. I had 20 after 10 hours a day, and tonight I still had 20 on my last video, which is an amazing video. Some real cool stuff in that last night show. Why is the media, which is all down at conference and parties, by the way, pretending they're on top of Reactor 4? Because Fukushima done exactly everything I showed you tonight, that's why. Fukushima was a pulse event. Each of the buildings had around 8 or 9 reactor cores. These are not opinions, and there was 4 reactor buildings. So I show you this picture because that's Reactor 3 or that's Reactor 4. That should be a no-brainer for everybody. But Reactor 1, of course, and Reactor 2 lost their inventories at the same moment. Within 5 days, they lost the entire inventories. Okay, we'll give it up here, I guess. I wasn't sure. So Reactor 2 in Japan, to cover up Reactor 1, or Reactor 3 and Reactor 4 damage, there was a story came out where they had a robot was going to go into reactor. Hang on, I'll show you a picture. Because it's kind of important, right? It's pretty crazy, right, when you think that the media pretended they were in a building that doesn't even exist. Where did I drop that to? Less than a gram. So I'm just going to play this one little clip here.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
So how can the media say they're on top of a building that don't exist? Why would they do that? So for Reactor 2, in order to distract you from this, they say, and James Lucid on YouTube had put a crazy song together about the bizarreness. And so they claimed it was less than a gram from the robots that was taken out of reactor 2. Well, you didn't need reactor 2 to get a sample. You had reactor 4, right? You could have got a sample from reactor 4 and you could have got a sample from reactor 3 because they were completely annihilated, right? The idea of reactor 2, because it was one of the few buildings that looks like they're intact. But we know reactor 2 liquefied. It's the first time in history we've ever seen a reactor liquefied. That's the wrong picture. There we go. I got the picture I wanted for you. So reactor 2 was about distracting you from reactor 3 and reactor 4, where you could have got the same samples. They're the same reactor, exact identical schematics, colors, size, everything, right? And so less than a gram is what they said they got from reactor 2. Reactor 2 kind of looked like this, where the building looks like it's intact, but that building went China syndrome deep into the earth. And so this is the closing song. Unless James posts one, we double check. Nobody works harder than that boy right there, man. Right? There really isn't anybody working harder. On that side of it, right? He's produced more anti-nuclear music than the entire planet combined in history. That's pretty freaking special. So we're going to play Less Than a Gram. We'll see everybody on the next show tomorrow night, hopefully. You're going to realize how ran down I actually am. I'm definitely rejuvenated quite a lot today. Pretty happy. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you make it this far. This is a fantastic song. If you got headphones, I advise you strongly to listen to it. The song is called Less Than a Gram. We'll see you in the next one.
Right beside old Unit 3 sits a shell-marked waste you see. Tanks of resin stacked with care, holding what the pumps caught there. TEPCO field 2 plans to show. One says yes, the other no. Each awaits a coming call. Neither clears the path at all. So they say, when the work might get underway. Decommission down the line, mid-century's hopeful sign. 880 tons remain, none retrieved from 3's domain. They debate what space to claim.